Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. No, it's not time for a book review today. I thought I'd do something a little bit different and talk about my note-taking process, if you could call it a process, simply because some of you have left various comments on different videos on this channel. Now you know that I usually do one review per video, and that basically means that the comments that I get from everyone could come from all sorts of different books. Books are always going to be out there and my reviews will always be out there, so it's always quite surprising to get comments back from book reviews that I may have done 3-4 years ago, where people find it, I guess, fascinating when they see the notes that I take. So I thought I would share my note-taking process. What I encourage you to do is think about whether you have your own process and then share that in the comments below. I'm not going to say that my way is the best way or my way is the only way. It is simply my way. It is simply a way that I do my note-taking. And everyone's going to be very different in how they take notes, how they reflect on the book, and what they even write. You can be structured, or you may have more of a free flow effect like I do. First of all, I want to talk about what I usually use, and I use notebooks. I love notebooks, and it doesn't matter what these notebooks look like. They could be various patterns as well. It doesn't really matter. However, I do like a nice notebook that I could use, because the notebooks then become my reflective journals. I start to write about my own life, my own experiences, my own thoughts, and these journals are only for my eyes. They're not for public consumption, except for the bits that I do share on book reviews, if I want to share some of my own notes that I have been taking while reading the books. So there's no rhyme or reason as to what notebook you can use. Secondly, the way I write my notes in these books again vary. However, if I was to sit and look at the type of patterns that I see in this book as to what I write, I would say that it is all about, I guess the first thing is writing about the characters and who they are. The characters also, I link them to kind of emotions or people that I know, or even other characters that I've come across in different books, because it makes me realize the feeling of that character. I do write about who the publisher is and a little bit about the author, but I also write sources of conflict or tension. So as I read the book, I will make notes of where those tensions are. I do write about the various themes, and the way I write these on the go while I'm reading the book, just so I could not forget any particular aspects of the book or what happened. The guts of the writing then starts into my own thoughts and reflections. And my own thoughts or reflections are my aha moments, or those moments that when I read the book, I think there's something strange or odd about this section. I can't figure this out. Or I take note of my own feelings or what they bring up, or even the ideas that the writing inspires. I also write some questions about the book, and usually the questions, I do this simply because I run a book club and I want to be able to ask those questions at the book club. And now I know that in a reflective journal you might not ask those questions, or you might ask the questions of yourself and then start to write the answers as you identify with the content. Sometimes I highlight certain aspects of the journal, especially if it really hits home for me. So as you can see, I do write quite a lot, and I always write aspects of my own life and experiences. So anything that the book brings up, anything that I start to feel odd, or any sensation of recognition or of weirdness or of connection, I would write it down and actually reflect on my own life. I think what helps in this aspect is the fact that I start to see patterns and linkages to other books or to other movies that I've been watching, maybe to music as well. So my reflective diary then starts to become a place where I meld my own thoughts and my own experiences with the books that I read. And I find that the books that I read and the ones that make most connection with are the ones that I resonate with because I've had very similar experiences, or I've had similar emotions, or the situations that I've been reading about in the book evoke something for me. And that could be memory, that could be reminiscence, that could be sources of conflict and tension that I've had in my own life. It could be anything. So you could see that I do write quite a lot. Now, I am thinking that in the near future, I'd love to be able to create my own journal where those triggers and those questions are already provided in the question. Right now, these journals are simply free-flowing journals. I write to my heart's content. But I know that some people out there need a little bit more structure, and they need the questions to be able to zone in and answer those questions rather than that free flow. And I think that free flow for me comes about simply because I've been doing this for my entire life. I've got years and years of journals. Ever since I was 15, I've been writing in them. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of journals. So I have been thinking of creating my own journal with some prompts or questions that can help people out there, and possibly then sell this journal on this channel. That is TBA, we don't know as yet, because I started creating something as a rough draft. I guess you could call it a proof. I've done it as my reading journal, Life Lessons from Books. This is just a proof copy. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to test it out first, see how I go. And if this is something that could be relevant for some people, I thought I might just create a journal, and if you're interested, you could buy it off this channel. The journal that I've created is it's soft cover, because I actually do believe that I like the size of a journal to be about this size, which is kind of like a standard, not too big so it could fit in your bag, but a journal is meant to be right next to your books. Whatever you're reading, have a journal nearby so you could immediately scribble down your thoughts. Now, some other things that you might be interested in, you might be asking, Helen, what do you use for your stationery apart from your journal? Well, obviously you need a good pen, and a pen that flows really helps. And I'm going to say that, you know, it doesn't matter what color you use, it doesn't matter how you do it. The most important thing is to just simply write. Let your brain flow onto the page and write at will. But I know that takes practice and that takes experience, and sometimes you want to be able to correct your thoughts, but I'd say don't correct them, just write them all down and have at least a pen that is free flowing and that allows you to get all your notes on paper. And then if you want to, if you're someone who needs colour, you can always colour code them with highlighters, or you can use these stick-it notes. Now, stick-it notes, I have these everywhere. I would say in nearly every room of the house. Okay, not every room. It's obviously not in the toilet. Everywhere where there happens to be a book in the house, there's stick-it notes everywhere. And as you can see, I use the stick-it notes to highlight certain passages of the book. And again, you might ask, Helen, do you use a particular color code for each? And I know some people do, like red might be anger, or yellow, green might be jealousy, or whatever themes that they could think of. And you can do that too. By all means, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. And I do know that some people out there want structure. They want to be able to color code everything, so at a glance they can tell what sections of the book are color coded. Now, I color coded some books for example, War and Peace. I color coded that because simply it was such a dense book and I wanted to be able to separate the elements of that book, and I used a color coding system that enabled me to quickly find sections of the book before I wrote them down in my journal. However, on the whole, I would say I don't use the color coding. It's whatever's handy. I will actually mark it. Why? Simply because when I mark the book, I don't simply mark it and then leave it. I will always return to it. After I've read the book, I will always return to it and write the various passages and the quotations down in my journal and revisit the thinking, the reason why I put those markers, these stick-it notes in there. So really, these are just flags for me to go back to. And then the bulk of my thinking, the bulk of reflection actually is my writing. You might also see me write and put marginalia in my books. And I usually do that if those books are my own. But given that a lot of my books that I read are all library books, are all borrowed, or they might be books that I want to give away again, I'm not going to write in them. If I want to keep the book, if I want to read it again, if it is a book that I know I'll come back to time and time again, by all means, I will use the notes and put marginalia in it, and I will use it like a textbook. But ultimately, again, I keep going back to the reflecting. The notebook is the biggest reflection part, which is where my own thoughts, experiences and connections with the book and the story are written. I do also have post-it notes. Post-it notes are everywhere around the house. I have them like look, I've got stacks of them and I love buying them. I don't know how you are in stationery stores, but these are cheap as, and you could find them, and I use them everywhere. These ones I also use, and I write the questions and I flag some ideas, inspirations, some thoughts that the various sections have given me. So for example, this is a book that my book club will be doing. In fact, I have invited Caroline Petite to our event where she's going to talk about how she wrote this book, why she wrote this book. It's The Natural History of Love by Caroline Petite. She's an Australian author, and as you can see, this is my third reading of this book. In my recent book, given that I need to ask the author all these questions, I have put in the different post-it notes with some of the questions and my aha moments. I'm going to leave this as is during my author event and hopefully get her to sign it. Sometimes you'll see that I leave post-it notes in each book. So in every book that I get, what I do is I grab these and I put some of them on the inside cover just so that they are handy. So whenever I'm reading the book, rather than me stopping my reading and going into another room or trying to find where I've left the post-it notes, they are already there for me, and I just simply unglue one and whack it in there. It's just simply for ease of not breaking up my concentration. And I know again that some people use a color coding system. I don't. It really depends on the book, because I find that if I structure my reading too much, that I am then thinking more along the lines of how do I structure a particular passage, or how do I structure a particular section that may have evoked some kind of emotion in me, and putting a particular color coding. I don't want the color coding to be my main focus. I want the focus to be the ideas, the inspirations, the connections, the reflections, the linkages, the patterns that I align to my own life and my own experiences, my own thinking. And what I'm always doing is trying to think of ways and looking at ways of seeing different perspectives from people. So if I start to think, oh, should this be a blue post-it note or a pink post-it note, and I don't have a pink post-it note, it throws me into disarray. That is the reason why a journal is the best way. Now, having said that, I am doing this all from the point of view of someone who is not doing this via an academic process or an academic method. There is no formal accreditation output to my reading. I'm not doing this to get some English literature degree or some kind of certification. I'm not doing this to have any of my reading formalized in any way. It is simply for me to understand myself, and to understand myself means I need to go deep into those reflections of the ideas set up in books. Now, what that means is if you are someone who is doing a formal accreditation, you're doing a degree or a certification of some sort, maybe you do need a little bit more structure in how you read. Maybe you do need the color coding for the different citations, for the different aspects and linkages, and that is, again, totally okay. Ultimately, the way that you would read depends on you discovering your best way of reading, and that might mean playing around, experimenting with some different ways. Start off initially doing the structure if you are a structured person, and if you need those prompts, and if you need that clear-cut prompting or structure or categorizing in some way. If you don't, then that's okay too. Use whatever form is available to you and see what works. But for purely reflective writing, for purely taking notes, for purely being able to write something down to your heart's content without editing, without reformatting, then I would say use the journals, use any journals to be able to get into that free flow aspect of your reading and focus more on your reading rather than coming up with structured color coding. Ultimately, what I'm saying is that you make reading in your own way. There's really no right or wrong way, even though there's many people out there on YouTube saying it's got to be this way. That is the way that works for them. Ultimately, I'm always for experimentation. Think about what the bigger picture is at hand, and that is getting a rewarding reading experience. And in whatever format that you want to try out, it would be the right way as long as you do the reflection piece, which is the writing of your thoughts, the writing of your ideas. So hopefully that shows you a little bit about how I take my own notes and reflective writing, that I draw out some life lessons from the books. Please let me know what your process or method is in the comments below. I'd be interested to find out more. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Bye for now.